You are watching the press preview, a first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. It's time to see what's making the headlines with The Sun's deputy political editor, Ryan Sabey, and The Guardian's political editor, Pippa Crerar. They'll be with us from now until just before midnight. So let's see what's on some of those front pages for you now. The Financial Times reports on the sudden power outages, which has swept much of Spain and Portugal, causing transport disruption and big problems with mobile phone signals. The Eye describes the two countries as having been thrown into chaos. The Guardian reports on Spain declaring a state of emergency in the wake of the phenomenon. The Sun writes no beer in Benidorm as the outage caused the closure of thousands of bars. And the Metro takes a whimsical approach to that story with the headline, Pain as Spain mainly off the mains. The front page of The Telegraph says net zero is being blamed for power outages across Spain and Portugal. Meanwhile, The Star writes Portugal is blaming Spain for the atmospheric vibrations. A new sugar tax is the lead on The Times, which it says could see milkshakes and lattes hit for the very first time. And the Daily Mail says Labour is facing a summer of discontent as nurses and teachers are amongst those issuing threats to strike again. The Mirror looks at the review into culture at the BBC with the headline, Culture of the Untouchables. And we're joined tonight by Ryan Sabey and Pippa Crerar to take us through the newspapers. Well, let's start with the big story of the day, the lead and that outage in Spain and Portugal. Your paper, Pippa, declaring, well, not the paper declaring, but Spain declaring a state of emergency.
Yes, this is tens of millions of people, about 60 million people have been left without power in a huge blackout that stretched right across Spain and Portugal, and left the transport system in chaos with metro lines down, people having to walk through tunnels to get out of them, traffic lights off, obviously causing chaos on the roads. They were told to stay at home. Hospitals having to rely on emergency generators. And that's before you get to, people's communications via either phone or internet and the impact that will inevitably have had on the economy, basically coming to a standstill for about 10 hours. And so the questions tonight are, why did it happen? And some of the media, not The Guardian in its headline, but The Telegraph, for example, talk about net zero being an issue. Now, that is perhaps an inevitable position for The Telegraph, quite sceptical about these issues to take, but it is the case that the rapid transfer from fossil fuels to renewable energy, in the case of Spain in particular, which has now got a huge amount of its power from renewables, particularly solar and wind, has made the issues that existed with balancing the grid, that have always existed wherever you've had a national grid, regardless of where the power has come in from. If there's a power surge, there's too much power, too little power, that can cause blackouts like this. It happened previously in cases in 2003 in Italy, in 2006 in Germany with fossil fuels. It happens is particularly vulnerable to it happening now because of the new technology, often not being connected in as sort of cohesive way as before. And then the second thing is interconnectivity between countries and whether power lines between countries, France and Morocco in this case, can cause, if there's sort of a temperature anomaly, can cause a blackout like this. So lots of questions for the Spanish engineers to be looking at tonight. Yes,
but you're right. Already the finger of blame being pointed towards net zero. Is that the true culprit, or is that really just a scapegoat, do we think, Ryan?
I think the main issue coming from politicians tonight, it seems like there's been a variation in the temperature, but I think there could well be something in this net zero argument. There's some experts in one of the papers talking about in the old systems that they were tried and tested, and they had shock absorbers in those systems. But because we've got the new solar power, we've got wind power, it just doesn't have that capacity. So once there is that problem, you certainly do fall foul, and that's why you've got the issues today.
Yes, rare atmospheric phenomenon have been described as induced atmospheric variation. All of these terms that we're trying to come to grips with and understand, as well as the experts, no doubt. The Sun taking a lighter tone, complaining about the lack of beer in Benidorm.
Oh, I think Ryan should...
Oh, OK.
It's a big issue if you're on holiday and you spend your hard-earned money all year to go out to Spain and you get to Benidorm and there's no electricity to power the pumps. You know, there's all sorts to play with. But,
warm beer,
warm beer, it's not good. And we've got a quote here from a holiday maker: "Beer's warm. Any chance of sorting this out, Spain? I can't drink warm beer in Benidorm." But there's 500,000 British tourists on that Iberian Peninsula, so there's a lot of people. So, you know, this is a sort of a lighter take on it, but there are issues about, you know, tourists and Brits trying to get home, trying to get cash out. There's runs on supermarket shelves. So there's serious issues when you've got a lot of people, not only the tourists there, but the people who actually live there.
Yes, yeah, and the point you raised about those being stranded, not able to get home.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I mean, the Guardian front page has got a picture of passengers at a railway station in Madrid. There's also other, more serious issues probably than people having the warm beer. I've got a friend that lives in Barcelona who still had power, who was messaging me earlier saying that there's helicopters overhead, police helicopters, because they're concerned that with the power outage, alarm systems on shops and on businesses are basically not working or disconnected, and they're worried about looters. So there's potentially, I mean, I think that's the reason for, one of the reasons for the state of emergency. They're concerned, from a potentially criminal perspective as well.
Yeah.
Also, massive issues with hospitals. You know, you've got to make sure they have backup systems, people going through operations that may have all been planned months in advance. So that's another thing to be concerned about.
Yes, they have cancelled all the non-urgent operations, but those that had to go ahead went so under generators. Let's move to the Mail, and they're telling us that Labour could be facing a summer of discontent. Pippa, why so?
So it's really just worth sort of going back a bit and explaining how the system works with public sector pay. So whether that's teachers, whether that's doctors or other hospital staff, any other public sector workers, the government asked the public sector review bodies to come up with their recommendations for what public sector pay could be set at. And then it's up to the government to decide whether to accept those recommendations or not. They will previously have budgeted, so I think the budget was about 2.8% pay rises. They'd already planned for this year, and what's come back is the recommendation is for it to be higher. And what the Treasury and what Downing Street said today in their daily briefing was that any extra over and above the budgeted amount that goes on pay rises has to be paid for from existing departmental budgets. That obviously then creates pressure on already cash-strapped departments, particularly big public service spending departments like health and education, as to what else is going to be cut to enable those pay rises to happen. And some of the unions have warned that if those cuts fall from existing budgets and mean more cuts, some of the education unions have warned that they're prepared to consider going on strike. So there's potentially, I mean, you'll remember when Labour came in, they made a huge thing of having brought an end to the NHS strikes, helping drive down waiting lists. Wes Streeting will not want having sort of, made such a huge issue of ending those strikes and getting, doctors back into work, NHS staff back into work and being able to drive down, do more operations, create more appointments, drive down waiting lists. The last thing they're going to want is more strikes now.
And Ryan, the Conservatives warning that Labour are going to give in to their union paymasters. I mean, that sort of phrasing perhaps typical of the Daily Mail.
Yeah, no, you're going to get these accusations in the coming weeks until this is sorted one way or the other. But this has been brewing for several weeks now. We had at the annual conferences from the teachers a few weeks ago. And one thing that they were saying, that these pay rises have to be fully funded, because once you start taking the money out of the existing budgets, the money for the rest of the education system or the rest of the schools is going to be taken away. So they don't feel like it's right that this money should come out of the existing money that's already been allocated. It should be found elsewhere. But then Rachel Reeves has got the big problem. Where does she find that money from? She's going to have to grapple already with the problem of the Trump tariffs and the knock-on effects for the economy. So where does she find this extra money? So just look forward to the budget. There's going to be issues of is it more spending cuts? Is it more tax rises? And this is the bind that she finds herself in.
You mentioned Donald Trump, which takes us to The Telegraph. And is this the fight back, certainly the fight back from Sir Keir Starmer against Donald Trump in terms of a pact with the EU? Pippa?
I think that's probably overstating it slightly. I mean, as we know, there are talks ongoing between Britain and the EU as part of this reset of relations. The government argues that it can get a better trade deal than the one we've got existing currently, that will mean fewer barriers to trade, that will mean more alignment between professional qualifications, things like that, and which will reduce ultimately costs on business. And so these discussions have been going on ahead of this big summit on May the 19th between Ursula von der Leyen, the European Commission chief, and Keir Starmer. And what has been published today is a sort of a preamble, if you like, to the document ahead of this summit. And what it does really is just underline shared positions. It's not that Britain has changed its position to align itself with the EU, or indeed that the EU's done the same for the UK, but on areas where they have a shared position, such as Ukraine's territorial integrity, the Paris Climate Agreement, and free trade, all of which are, of course, areas that Donald Trump has drifted from the transatlantic consensus to reach his own position on. They're just underlining the fact that we have that in common. And it's like a reiteration of that, I suppose. But in the broader context of, is the government going to have to at some point, pivot to either the US or to the EU? Government says, no, we can do both. But this is a real, yet again, another reminder of actually how much we now have in common with our EU partners, as opposed to what's going on across the Atlantic.
Could be described as the beginning of the fight back, though, isn't it? Because all of those policies are against Donald Trump. I'm sticking with it. Pippa and Ryan, thank you very much for the moment. We're going to take a break. Coming up, the Home Secretary sets out plans to ban foreign sex offenders from claiming asylum in the UK. We will be discussing that next.
On May the 1st, people across the country will head to the polls.
There's a lot at stake.
A seat in Parliament, 1,600 council seats and 6 mayoral elections, all up for grabs.
Who will win the tight race in the Runcorn and Helsby by-election?
Join us for Vote 2025. The results live as they come in, analysis and reaction.
Get the full story fast on Sky News.
I'm Dominic Waghorn, Sky's International Affairs Editor, covering a world that seems to be unravelling. War, unrest, revolutions.
It's not his country, it's ours.
They have succeeded for the first time in their country's history in removing a leader from power.
No freedom!
Sky News, the full story first. There was fighting here, but there's clearly now a lull, and they're using it to bring up more ammunition. This is a mass exodus in which Russia is hemorrhaging some of its brightest and its best. According to the local weather channel, there have been more than 2,500 lightning strikes and flash flooding, all on top of this week's lethal tornado. What stays with you most in this job is some of the people you meet. What is your worst fear about what the Russians want to do to the children?
They're just boosting demographics by stealing young people.
Would you like to take the opportunity, Mr. President, on Sky News to invite Barack Obama to come here? Mr. Trump, are you running for president? Can you confirm it?
We're going to take a look, a very serious look.
On that day, we saw your fighters killing women, killing children. Was that a mistake? Did you go too far? You couldn't control your fighters? The full force of the state is being used to crush any protest. Free wherever you get your news. It's half an hour now past the deadline that Hamas issued, and we've now seen a third barrage of rockets coming in.
Another alarm. The mood here is jittery and nervous.
We're seeing the world get more and more divided, and it's our job to try to make sense of it all.
Jubilation in the streets, while some emotional.
This is a political victory for Prime Minister Modi and his Hindu Nationalist Party.
I'm Neville Lazarus, and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi. Companies like these are helping India in its trajectory to be a serious player in space exploration. Sky News, get the full story first.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. I'm ready. Are you? Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
Welcome back. You are watching the press preview. Still with me, Ryan and Pippa, taking us through the papers. We're going to have a look at The Guardian to start off this section. And this is the story that sex offenders are to be barred from gaining asylum under a new law. This is announced by Vet Cooper, the Home Secretary. Pippa.
Yes, so this has just been announced by the Home Office, and ministers are going to get powers to exclude any foreigners convicted of sex offences in the UK or abroad from protection under the Refugee Convention. And that means that, and even if the sentence is less than 12 months, so that people, probably numbering hundreds rather than thousands, but people that are in the asylum system, the government will be able to remove. Now, the numbers are quite small, really, when you're looking at the overall removals picture. But I think it's quite important from a symbolic point of view, because it shows that the government is prepared to find a way through things like the Refugee Convention in order to sort of get to a result that the public would support. I think there's some suggestion that under the European Convention of Human Rights, people would still be able to appeal, but I think that we're not quite sure yet whether that would actually still be the case. And when you consider that the local elections are this Thursday, and the biggest threat to a lot of the focus will obviously be on the Conservative reform battle, but the biggest threat to Labour is coming from a reform, then it's hard not to see this through the framing of Labour thinking, well, you know, let's talk about, let's sort of lean into our migration policy. They argue, Downing Street said to me today, it's not just about that, it's about, you know, we came to power knowing that immigration is one of the three things, along with the NHS and cost of living, that voters are most concerned about, is voters in every, you know, right across the political spectrum that are worried about migration and border control. Yes, people confuse legal and illegal, irregular migration, but this is something that really matters to voters. So it's not just, as some Labour MPs say, us pitching to reform, to the right, to tackle, to challenge
And Ryan, this is
reform.
Likely to be hugely popular with the public.
Yeah, I think the Labour government and ministers are thinking about when people go into the ballot box this Thursday for the local elections. And one of the big problems every party has had in recent months, whether it's Sir Keir Starmer for Labour, Kemi Badenoch, is how do you out-Farage? And immigration seems to be one of those issues Labour seem to think they may have a chance with. But the trouble is you've got this issue here with the sex criminals being banned. You've also got the high rates of channel crossings. You know, we reached 10,000, or we're about to reach 10,000 channel crossings of people in small boats in the next day. And it's a big issue for them. Sir Keir Starmer said he wanted to smash the gangs. Rishi Sunak said he wanted to stop the boats. No one seems to have got an answer for this. And now, you know, we're just a few months into the year and we've reached that, you know, really high figure. And it's a big problem for them.
Pippa, let's turn to a possible milkshake tax, but it's actually a sugar tax, isn't it?
Milkshakes and lattes, apparently, were the exception or the exemption to the rule, which ministers had decided was an anomaly. And the Treasury has today suggested that it's time to go further, be more ambitious on unhealthy drinks. Now, if you look back and see how successful these sugar taxes have been from a public health point of view in the past, George Osborne in 2016, the Conservative Chancellor, introduced a levy on drinks with a sugar content of more than 5 grams per 100 millilitre. And that was hailed as a big success by campaigners. It resulted in the sugar content of soft drinks right across the board falling quite dramatically. And so now I think ministers are thinking, you know what, we can go further. There are some exceptions to the original sugar tax, things like Rubicon, Lucozade, Fanta, Ribena, Iron Brew, ginger beer. They all had sugar content reduced just below the 5 gram minimum.
Right.
So and drinks, yeah, San Pellegrino, another one.
But there will be outrage at this. Lots of the government. The government came in saying they weren't going to tax working people. People will see this as a tax, and people go about their shopping and just more tax.
You know what I'd love to see though is an impact assessment compared to the cost of dentistry. It's the single biggest issue for kids being admitted to hospital is decayed teeth. So you crack down on that. You end up saving the NHS money.
Pippa and Ryan, thank you very much for taking us through the papers. We'll see you in the 11 o'clock hour. Let's take a look at the weather.
Breathtaking views with clear skies ahead. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Well, it will be mostly dry with plenty of sunshine this weekend and will turn very warm. Temperatures look like peaking on a Thursday when 29 Celsius, 84 Fahrenheit is possible. Before then, there'll be a mostly dry and sunny start tomorrow, but northern Scotland will be quite cloudy, while the Northern Isles look dull and damp. Expect a few fog patches elsewhere. The morning will be mostly dry and sunny, with any fog lifting readily and the cloud over Scotland breaking away from the far north.
Breathtaking views with clear skies ahead. Qatar Airways sponsors the weather.
Coming up next on Sky News at 11, Spain and Portugal grapple with a major power outage across large...
A show of military might and menace. Why should the West trust you?
Frankly, I don't care whether the West trusts us or not.
Sky News. Get the full story first. Have a quick word for Sky News. Is the West right, i.e. fueling Russia's war machine? American journalist Evan Gershkovich is on trial here, but was first on display. I'm Ivor Bennett, Sky's Moscow correspondent.